and welcome into Poke the Bear episode 83, the Carson Kuhlman episode. I think this might be one of the last numbers we have, because 84, I know who that'll be. I don't think it's an 85 or an 86 or an 87 or many of those. There's a 91, obviously, and then after that, it's kind of barren, right?
Well, don't forget, 83 is also Peter Solaric. So, Destroyer.
Touchy subject.
Destroyer of World, Peter Solaric, who finally got his revenge. Not against the Bruins, but against the United States. So
he went against he should have went against Claude in Canada. That's who he should have went against, or Bruce Cassidy from Canada as well. Yeah, like go against them. I was so disappointed, by the way. I don't know if you stayed up and watched that. I did, because I got off work pretty late, and I was like, "Oh, I'll stay up and watch the USA game." And I was like, "Oh, they're doing well, playing well." And then that goal goes in with like 43 seconds left, and then the shootout, and I said, "There it is. This is definitely it." Disappointing.
Well, also, it's very funny that I think they beat Canada in that one game. Canada, who was also out in the quarterfinals, and it was like, I think it was a CNN that was like, the USA team is hearkening back to the 1980 Miracle on Ice team, and it's like, when I think of guys like Karlamov and Tretiak, I think of 37-year-old Eric Stahl and Mason McTavish. It's tomato,
Same
right?
Same thing. It's the same players. I was disappointed. I honestly, the hockey wasn't all that great. But it was the American team was fast, and they had some exciting young college players who you can follow over at ncaa.com. And it was fun to watch, and I was so disappointed when they lost, because damn, I actually enjoyed watching this. But nevertheless, two teams that people in Boston or in New England cared about a lot lost in shootouts on Tuesday night. But it's funny. You're in New York. You're in New York. You were at MSG. You'll be at UBS Arena tomorrow. You've got your dunks. How has it been?
Cream or anything? It's been
How's
great.
It been being on location?
It's great. It's a great city. Good to be here. I was able to watch the Rangers game in person, which anyone who has not gone to Madison Square Garden, definitely do it. Looking forward to going over to UBS Arena on today, on the day this podcast drops. So good to check out the new digs there. So good to be back on the road, and we'll see how the Bruins kind of handle the Islanders, who I think going into the year we thought was going to be a Eastern Conference Final potential matchup, and now they're kind of going downhill, so we'll see.
They're going to be like 9th overall pick. That's what they're going to be, which is never a fun place to be. But yes, have fun, enjoy, say hi to the Statue of Liberty for me. And I've actually never been to New York City. Isn't that wild? Never been to New York City.
Are you serious?
Been in New York, but I've never been to New York City.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. I've never been to NYC. Isn't that nuts?
There's so many things you're missing. There's the M&M factory.
I was going to say the M&M, Nick Ritchie, the M&M factory.
Bubblegum shrimp. Yeah. There's so many things you're missing. You haven't gone to Sparrow.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I can't miss Sparrow. But anyways, you were there now.
Bring you.
Yeah, well, next time I'll have to join along for the trip to NYC. But anyways, statement game for one Bruin in particular was Jeremy Swayman, who, again, we've kind of said all year with him, really good against mediocre to bad teams, but against really good teams, you haven't seen what you wanted to see. Felt like Tuesday night, you saw what you wanted to see when it came to him against a good team.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially against, a matchup against probably the Vezina favorite right now in Shesterkin. I mean, it's one thing to watch him live and just see how many grade A saves he stopped, but you look at both the baseline numbers, the underlying numbers. This is I think he's saved 30 goals above average already this year, which is kind of ridiculous. And you kind of can see from that Rangers team, lethal top six, fantastic goaltender. Not that great at even strength. As long as you keep them off the power play, you have a good chance, even though, then again, you can't really build much of a lead if Shesterkin's out there. But for Swayman to, kind of build off of that shutout win against Ottawa, which, again, it's Ottawa, so you'll take the shutout. But to see him then get another start, back-to-back and go up against Rangers in Madison Square Garden in a game where Shesterkin was in complete control, to kind of have that back and forth overtime shootout where it seemed like both those guys were kind of trading chances, trading great grade A saves. I'm sure it does wonders for Swayman's confidence, and you're going to kind of have to need it right now, right? You look now that Tuukka Rask isn't in the equation anymore. It's one thing if we look back at November and December where it's like, all right, we know Swayman's going down there, but all these reps are going to help him out. They still think highly of him. Now it's all right. We need him to perform right now because there's no safety net of Rask coming back, what have you. Like, this is who you've got right now with Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark, and who knows, maybe Ullmark goes on a run, but the Bruins, I think, especially would like to see Swayman take that next step. And performances like this, even if it's only just 1 point, is a good way to kind of build up that confidence because, again, Shesterkin's probably the class of the NHL right now. Swayman looked pretty damn good right next to him in that game. Yeah, in a game that kind of went from being a pretty dull first 2 periods to all of a sudden it felt like a playoff game, kind of going to that overtime, right? So it was good to see Swayman really kind of handle that, added spotlight, that matchup, and come away looking like a legit NHL goaltender, which the Bruins think
And
he is.
Yeah, and again, I mean, if he controls that rebound on their lone goal, it's a 1-0 win. Like,
Yeah.
again, I mean, obviously it's easy to point out those little mistakes, but that was a simple. I mean, that goal somewhat was his fault. Mike Riley went down early. Like, there were other factors into it, but it was kind of like, well, if you just corralled the rebound, you win that game 1-0. But it's an interesting thing because that third period did feel like such a playoff atmosphere. You were there again, you felt it, but even just watching from home, the first 2 periods were like, they went by quick. But in the third period, it was very much felt like a playoff atmosphere. And again, I also look back to how the Bruins played their defense in this game because they packed it in a lot in the D zone. And again, someone asked me on Twitter, and a Rangers fan, I believe, asked me on Twitter and said, do they normally pack it in like that, or was it just because Marchand and Bergeron were out? And I said, well, I think it was mainly because Marchand and Bergeron were out. But it is encouraging that against a really good top 6 like the Rangers have, even though they're not elite 5-on-5, against a team like that, without those top 2 key cogs, you held your own defensively, which is something we also have not seen from this team for a while either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, it may not be the prettiest brand of hockey, but if it guts out points when you're without your top guys, and if you're in the playoffs and you're meeting up against the Rangers, the Hurricanes, the plenty of other teams that can bury you with a lot of goals, Florida, Tampa Bay, you're going to have to play that style of hockey, I think, just to survive some of these games against teams with considerably more firepower. So, again, I think the Bruins defense has been kind of a target in terms of areas to improve or whether or not they have the right personnel. And again, you had some miscues there. Clifton had a little bit of a rough game. As you said, Riley was kind of sprawled out there.
Clifton and Hall just took themselves out.
Yeah, it was a great. It's good to see Taylor Hall be very physical with a bone crunching hit. Just wish it wasn't against his own teammate. That's not great. But between that, guys like Carlo, who I think really have to tighten up their game. I think everyone has more or less said that already. It's still encouraging from the perspective of not maybe the personnel, but the scheme, that it seems like the collective unit as a whole can kind of execute what the Bruins need to do in that situation. Which, I mean, we've seen it. It's mapped out in their underlying numbers, what have you, that they don't give up a lot of grade A chances compared to other teams. And you kind of saw that against the Rangers, who, again, Bruins easily could have left that game a 1-0 win with 2 points, which would have been huge. But even to get away with 1 point still seems like you can draw quite a few silver linings out of a game like that.
Oh, yes, for sure. Another thing from that game, you mentioned Shesterkin earlier getting pulled with 40 seconds left in overtime by the concussion spotter. Now, some were saying it was because he flopped. It was tough to tell. I mean, he did get run into. There was maybe a little theatrics to it. But him just, having to, slam in the stick against the glass. And definitely, I mean, weird timing by that spotter. I mean, that is like, remember a few years ago, it was Marchand, right, who got pulled in the middle of a game and said, like, oh, they're just up there.
Eating cheeseburgers
eating cheeseburgers. I remember from the before concussion spotter, he was just trying to do his job. The guy's like, oh, I think he hit his head, like we're calling him off. But interesting stuff there. Again, Shesterkin is ridiculous. Like I don't think people understand how good he is.
Yeah, which also goes. No, as you were saying.
As I was saying, okay, but it's you mentioned. I was just gonna segue into you mentioned a few weeks ago, or maybe it was last week or the week before. Because I said, is there any other team that has had a Tim Thomas to Tuukka Rask style kind of transition? It seems like the Rangers are the next team up for that.
Yeah, go from Lundqvist to Shesterkin. And it's also very fascinating when you look at just the way this kind of rebuilt on the fly. I guess maybe not on the fly, but it's been a pretty quick turnaround in terms of it seems like they're building themselves back up. And it kind of goes back to, I think we talked about this last week in terms of the Bruins and what they do moving forward, whether it's rebuilding or buying, selling, standing pat. You look at the Rangers and, they had that that letter that they penned in 2018 after Tim Schaller like destroyed them in that game. Remember that crazy goal? And like the next day, Jeff Gordon was like, "Yeah, we're gonna blow it up." So they had that, but
Yeah.
you kind of look at
Brendan
you look,
Smith.
yeah, you look at like that path they kind of mapped out, and how do they really kind of get back to where they were? It's not like they blew everything up and then just won the lottery and got legit players. Like, I mean, Capocaco's one not playing and two has been fine. And then Lafreniere, people thought he was going to be like a 30 goal scorer. He's all right. Like you look at what's kind of
Average.
turned them. Yeah, you look what's turned them around. It's one, like obviously you've gotten great offensive production from a guy like Panarin, who you spent a lot of money on, but has been well worth it. You've got guys that you've entrenched in the organization that you didn't trade, like Kreider, who are playing great. You win a trade for Zibanejad, which was a steal at the time, and it looks even better now. But then you look at all these other guys that have kind of supplemented through, and it's whether it's Adam Fox, who you trade for, but again, he was a third-round pick. You look at Shesterkin, who's a fourth-round pick. Sometimes it's just a crapshoot, right? In terms of how you it's not like these are all just first-round picks, or you look at the Brooklyn Nets like new starting lineup, and it's like first overall pick, second overall pick. Like it's not like that really for the Rangers, where it's again, it's you kind of just have to hit on the right pieces, build kind of that skeleton or framework of a roster, which again we've talked about before. The Bruins kind of have moving forward with McAvoy, Pasternak, Swayman. Like they have a skeleton that you can kind of build around. It's just now supplementing that in the years ahead with doesn't have to be first round picks, makes the odds a lot easier if they are continuing to get first round picks. But sometimes whether it's you wait for another third or fourth round guy to really kind of develop into a regular NHLer, that's how the Rangers kind of got back to where they are.
I mean, Bergeron was a second round pick, and you look at guys like Lucic and Marchand; these were not top picks. And I think it's partially getting lucky and just good drafting. Like I think it's a perfect blend of both. And it's funny that the interesting thing about Panarin is Panarin. You don't see a lot of highly paid free agents in hockey go elsewhere and do really, really well. He has elevated his game even past where it was.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Was it 18-19 or 19-20 where he could have won MVP, even though I think they like almost missed the play, or they made the bubble? And it was 19-20. He was just unconsciously good.
Yeah, he's a freak.
So
I mean, that dude is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and again, Kreider also was another guy at the. But what deadline was it? The 20 deadline?
That was 2020. I want to say.
Yeah,
because they thought they were going to trade him, and then they signed him like I think the day of the deadline to a contract extension. So.
And that was the guy that the Bruins were like reportedly potentially in on. So
checks off all the boxes.
Yeah, he does check off the local kid, all that stuff. The other funny thing is I always thought the Rangers were a good fit for Jack Eichel. Obviously that ship has sailed, but I always thought, hey, you have the pieces, it'd still be good. Wouldn't be a bad idea. Speaking of not bad ideas, Patrice Bergeron is back. Bruins dodge a huge bullet, never had a concussion, just had a laceration to his head, he said. It's not confirmed yet that he's playing Thursday, but it feels like it's because he was in a non-contact jersey that he probably will be back in the lineup. Safe to say, though, pretty big bullet dodged.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just we talked about in the immediate aftermath. It's not just losing Bergeron for any stretch of time, which is a big hit for the Bruins, but we've talked about it before with his concussion, history, the dangers of that, the perils of trying to map out the recovery for an injury like that, especially when he suffered it. It's one of those ones where if it was a concussion, you have to go through that kind of narrative of, all right, this is already a guy who's talked repeatedly before about taking kind of a step back and evaluating his career and his future going forward this upcoming offseason. If he has another concussion, which he's had plenty of times before, is it the thing that puts him over the edge of, I can't keep doing this. I have to take kind of the longer view beyond my playing career. So again, it's only a laceration that needed like quite a few days to heal up. Same as like Coyle. Coyle got like I think his wrist cut by Swayman.
Yes, that was scary. That could have been really bad.
And literally after, he's like, "Oh, I'm fine. Just a few stitches. Like probably like cut all the way through here, but
yeah,
it's good to go."
No big deal.
I mean, for the Bruins, for that to be just a, I guess what is it, superficial wound, whatever. Like it's not like a concussion or anything like that. I'm not a doctor. You wonder why I went to college of communication?
Crazy.
Yeah,
you went to BU.
I don't know, but for him to have an injury like that, it does seem like a bullet dodge, and that it wasn't something that has long-term implications or anything that could really sideline him both for an extended stretch now, or especially when we get to June and he has to kind of look and evaluate kind of what the next step is for him in his career.
Yeah, no, definitely a huge bullet dodge with that again. Like you're seeing you've seen the past bunch of games without him how important he is to this Bruins team. Anyways, Brad Marchand on Wednesday, so before this drops, is appealing his 6-game suspension, which we've all been waiting for. Gets a chance in person to do it. I don't know. I just have a feeling it's probably not getting shortened. Do you think there's a chance that it could be?
I think maybe he might get like a game knocked off of it, but again, I think you look at it's already one where I think not the Bruins, the league office is trying to make a pretty strong statement in terms of really kind of doing what it can to kind of nip it in the bud in terms of a guy with his history and what you have to do to really kind of send a message, which seems like they sure did with a 6-game suspension. And, as much as I think Marchand, he talked recently about it and how he doesn't want to, he didn't think it was, the punishment fit the crime in terms of, Jari wasn't injured after the game. Even Jari was pretty much like, yeah, that happens. It wasn't like Ryan Miller where remember when Lucic ran him over and had like
Yes.
an 11-second press conference where he just
Yes.
yelled
Yes.
at Milan Lucic. It wasn't like that. So, but Bergeron spoke with us on Wednesday after practice and more or less said the same thing in terms of, what his case would be. Granted, it's not like a courtroom where like Bergeron is going to come and vouch for Marchand, but he said pretty much the same thing that Marchand's talked about, that even with his history, which you have to be cognizant about, it still wasn't an incident that injured Jari or what have you. And at the very least, it's a suspension-worthy offense, but 6 games, maybe scale it back. So who knows? Maybe it ends up being 4 games, 5 games, or the league can just sit still and keep it as is, and hopefully that kind of delivers a message to Marchand. But in terms of getting it completely wiped off the board, in terms of him getting back here on Thursday tonight against the Islanders, probably not. I would assume not. But even if you get 1 game kind of knocked off here, I'm sure the Bruins will take that because he clearly deserved the suspension in some capacity. It's just, I think for him, probably it's the length of it that is what kind of drawn the ire from him in the NHLPA.
Because he's missed 3 games thus far. So you get 3 so far, and then it comes down to the next 3. Maybe they say, you know what, Brad, we're going to actually extend it.
That would be less than ideal.
No, I just personally, I think with the way the league views him, with his past history and everything, his reputation that they continue to put into play, doesn't feel like they're going to knock down the 6 games. I would also love to be a fly on the wall in the appeal hearing. Just like what he says and how it goes and the bad blood. Like I'd love to just kind of witness it all.
He just has like a PowerPoint. I can't even say that word. A PowerPoint presentation. He just has that on, but it's like it's like those TikToks where it's like the Hotline Bling playing, and it's just like a really bad 3D thing, and it won't even load. And you're like, no, it's 6 games, Brad. Like we have other stuff to do.
Yes. I think that he's gonna go for that. Maybe he makes like a TikTok dance, and that's how he presents.
I don't know how that's gonna sway George, but we'll see.
It could. I never know. I mean, maybe George, you got to be more with the kids. This is what the kids are doing. Maybe that works itself out. But should be interesting to see what happens with his appeal. I just doubt it goes under 6. But on a much better Bruins note, this Frederick Coyle Smith line. We discussed this a little bit on Bruins because we saw it a little bit in the Ottawa game. Now it's another game of them playing really well together. And it's one of these lines that when you really think about it, could open up a lot of doors and opportunities in the top 6, right? If you can put Smith with Coyle and they produce, and you find a spot for Frederick in his kind of tough game mixed with like actually playing real hockey, you might have something here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a positive domino effect if you're able to keep that line together. And it seems like, barring any other late lineup changes, you're probably going to see that line again on Thursday against the Islanders because Bergeron was with Hall and Pasta on that top line today, and they pretty much the Hall line has kind of more or less been broken up. He's kind of back more on a 3rd line role, and it's the Frederick Coyle Smith line that's kind of still the de facto 2nd line there. So once you get back to full strength, that as you said, not only is it I think one of the more encouraging things you've seen so far from that line is it seems like Coyle's been a lot more assertive, especially in the offensive zone. He's not deferring as much. I mean, he gets that goal off of, kind of just driving towards the net, rebounds there, and he's able to knock it past Shesterkin, which is no easy task, as we've seen from him all year. But then, yeah, if it also not only gets Coyle more engaged, which is a key thing this team needs to do to kind of get that middle six group going, if you're able to get Smith going, which seems like that guy's been snake bit about 10 games now, that you hope that eventually he gets into one of these 4 goals in 5 games kind of run here that, is able to get him going a little bit. And again, as you said, Frederic, who we know he can be a regular fourth line guy, but if this kind of unlocks a little bit more offensive game out of him, having him play kind of more straight line minutes of just being more of a power forward than just a forechecking presence, I mean, that gets him going. Because again, I don't think the Bruins need him to be a 30 goal scorer, and he won't be. But if it's a situation where he becomes just a solid middle six guy that it contributes to your team, you'll take it. So if that ends up being your third line, and you can roll with a group that is physical, can be a matchup problem against heavier teams in the playoffs, seems like it works out for everyone involved.
Yeah, again, that they all play kind of similar, right? They play a hard-nosed game that, they're good on the forecheck, all those kind of things, especially in the O-zone. So I feel like that is a line that could work. Again, that's one of those lines where you kind of everyone complements each other in a sense. You don't have it's not like when they stick Anton Bleed with Jack Studnicka or something like that.
Yes.
Like this is, you got everyone who kind of does similar things on the same line. And we mentioned this on Bruins Beat, but like, in a perfect world, let's say when everyone's back and healthy, you could have Marchand and Bergeron with an Oscar Steen or a right wing that you go out and get from, you trade from somewhere. Your second line could be something like, Hall, Halla, Pasternak. And then your third line is this third line. Now, is that ideal? Not in the terms of what they really need, because they need more depth down the middle. But if JT Miller's price is way too high, Tomas Hertl gets, re-signed, and kind of all those things happen, this isn't a terrible like plan C or D, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, as you said, if it just balances out that scoring, it's going to be key for this team in terms of just giving yourself more options. So, again, going into the year, were you going to say that Frederic was going to be like next to Coyle as a missing piece? No, but if the sum of those parts draws the best out of these guys when they're playing at their best, because I mean, we saw it, we've talked about it before, but in that 2019 playoff run, not only was that third line with Heinen and Johansson and Coyle so great because it seemed like the points were producing, but also that was when Coyle was more or less a finisher on that line. He had 7-8 goals during that playoff run, and he was kind of the guy that was taking those shots that was driving towards the net. So if he's with 2 other physical guys there and Frederic and Smith, and it gets the best out of him, you'll absolutely take it. So yeah, definitely. There hasn't been a lot of good news to report over the last week, to say the least, about this Bruins team. But if they're able to come out of this stretch with, at least string together some points, and you get Bergeron and Marchand back, and all of a sudden you have the makings of a third line there that you can kind of roll with going forward and build some consistency going into kind of the stretch run here, Bruins will absolutely take that.
Pretty good stuff. Anyways, that is today's Poke the Bear. Connor, what can the people look forward to from BSJ in NYC?
Yeah, we're going to continue to give you all the content you expect from a BSJ subscription, where we'll have game recaps, we'll have breakdowns, video breakdowns, able to get a few interviews, working on a couple of features, which I'll be happy or excited to share over the next couple of days, weeks. So all that stuff will be over at BSJ. So please subscribe to BSJ, BostonSportsJournal.com. You want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky.